topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Why Johnny Hates Sports is a best-selling book about kids in sports. It chronicles why, at a very early age, children are thrust into organized sports long before they have the necessary skills to feel successful. Fathers and mothers are asked to be their coach without having any training on how to coach. And the leagues in which kids play are governed by volunteers whose main focus becomes scoreboards, championships, and all-star games. Statistics show that close to 70% of kids will have quit by the age of 13. Most said it ceased to be fun. And that's why Johnny Hates Sports.
Yeah, you know what? You ever hear things coming in threes? I'm getting really worried. I'll tell you why. Yesterday, my car went out, and I had to get a few golfers drive me home. One of them being my son, who got over to the car shop. That's the first thing. The second thing is this morning, my friend Lorenzo from Cabot, Arkansas, was supposed to be here, and he didn't show up. And now I'm worried about what's the third thing that's going to happen today. So I'm going to try to get through this show before we get to our special guy, Ross Smith, in Extra Innings. But so in the meantime, you know, I thought I'd do a little review of all of the different things about sports for kids and kind of why Johnny Hates Sports. And one of the things that we have been talking about with rec directors from around the country is about how travel teams destroy what's happening for recreation play for kids. I remember when our kids were out playing, you know, people in the neighborhood, you know, he could have been a truck driver, plumber, whatever it happens to be down the street. He decided that we needed to have a baseball program for kids. So there was a field the rec department had, but there was no leagues. They didn't do anything about it. They just let somebody lease the field. And that's what happened in this case, that so many communities have what I call Billy Jones's father. They go out and they get a lease to rent the field. And then all these people sign up. So now here you have with baseball, football, and soccer to a great degree, people leasing fields. But then all of a sudden comes along travel teams. And then you got these guys that walk in that are ex-soccer players that profess to be professional teachers and organizers. They haven't had any experience in that, but they go ahead and do it anyway. They go into the rec department and say, I tell you what, we want to lease those fields that you're giving to these rec leagues, and we're going to pay you money for that. And you know where the money's coming from? We're going to charge a little bit of a fee to these people. I have a friend of mine who told me that last year it cost she and her family $15,000 for them to do travel teams. They traveled here, there, and everywhere. And the whole idea, as you guess, is that it's based on competition and getting our kids, you know, to a next level. That's the thing that's so weird about it, that they can get to the next level, they think, because they're elite players. And I'm not going to let Mary Ann and Billy or Tommy or whoever it is who has all this talent be wasted. So they go to the travel teams, never realizing that they're going to spend all this money that they could have saved up and paid for a college tuition because they thought it was going to be definitely a scholarship. So a small number of those kids that go out there and to get on, you know, travel teams ever make it. So that's another area that I think needs to be addressed, and who knows what will ever happen with those poor kids in the neighborhood who can't afford all of that to be able to go out and travel. And hopefully they'll get back on the field somehow, that people in the communities will say, hey, yeah, we need to get those kids back out there. Here's another topic I'd like to say that I know it's kind of harsh when I tell you, but that's why I think that youth sports for kids below the age of 12 probably is a farce. Yeah, it's a farce. Why do I say that? Because let me tell you, you could get a 7-year-old child. Let's say it's a kid, boy, 7 years old. Did you ever stop to think that there are early matures and late matures? And the early mature, you can have a 7-year-old, and that 7-year-old can be a late mature. And guess what? He can have the body, strength, and everything else that goes with a 4-year-old. So you look at his 7-year-old, and he's really small, doesn't have the skills, and he's playing against a kid that is 7, that is now 4 years up. So he's 11 years old, but he's still 7 years old, but he's got a body of an 11-year-old. So you got an 11-year-old playing against a 4-year-old. Now think of that when you're thinking you got kids playing hockey or football, or size makes a difference. So you got a kid out there playing football, and yeah, they do weights, and because they say, oh well, if this kid weighs too much, but you still think about it. You've got a 7-year-old that looks like a 12-year-old, and they stick him in the position that they say, wow, this kid's got to be good for our team because look how big he is. And then the poor little kid that is a late mature, he ain't even going to get on the team. But yet they're both 7 years old. So it becomes a farce. And even in baseball, you ever look at the World Series, the Little League World Series? It drives me crazy sometimes. I've seen times where a 12-year-old was 6'1". Now think about that. 6'1" being 12 years old just because you're an early mature. And so it becomes, like I say, it becomes really a farce. And you figure it out because I can't. Here's another thing. I want to ask you a question. Do you think a guy, a father, or a mother should coach their own kids? That's a good question, because here's what happens. All across the country, when parents sign their kids up, the scenario is like this. They go in to wherever they're signing up, and they say, okay, sign on the line here. Yep, I hold your son, I hold your daughter. Thank you. Now I'll get on that line over to your right. Well, what's that line over there? Well, that's where you sign up to be a coach. What? I don't know anything about coaching. I just want my kid to learn to play baseball, and I want him out there and see how good he is. Well, guess what, sir? Your kid isn't going to play unless you coach. So there he goes. He's over in that line. Excuse me, it's allergy season here in Florida. So he's over in that line, and he signs up, and they tell him to come out. And all of a sudden he comes out and says, I don't know what to do. And he kind of learns, if he's a baseball coach, he can just go sit and hide in the dugout and watch the game go on. He doesn't know a strategy or anything, except one of the things that he does know is out in right field, there's a big scoreboard. And that scoreboard now says your team is now losing 4-3. And the umpire just calls a strike 3 on one of your star players, and you know that it wasn't a strike. So now you go running out there screaming and hollering and acting like an idiot. and then the umpire throws you out of the game, and you're the president of the bank, and everybody that's sitting in the stands is saying, "Hey, there's Tom Jackson, the president of the bank. He just got thrown out of a game because arguing with the umpire about whether it was a strike ball because his kid was at bat." Yeah, that's a scenario. That's what happens. And so across the country, that's what we have are hundreds and thousands of examples going on right now. And right now is getting ready for the All-Star games, the championships, World Series, and everybody's nervous. I remember when I was a recreation director, and it got to the beginning, and let's say we're still talking baseball. Got to the beginning of the season, everybody said, "Oh, this is great." People talking about coaches and parents losing perspective and screaming and hollering. Nobody did that. You know why? Because there weren't any standings. There was nobody there saying, "Oh, what place is your team in? And how does your team look?" You don't care because you don't know. You're just there because that guy down there said, "Go over and sign up on that line over there to be the coach." So, so now season goes on, one game, two games, three games. Everything's moving along until now it's get near the end of the season, and your team's in second place. Now's when the emotions arise. I have seen and I've heard so many stories in my experience as a recreation professional, as a father of seven kids that played. I heard you say, what did he say? He has seven kids. Yeah, me and my wife have seven kids. Every one of them played one kind of sport or the other. And every single one of them have one kind of a problem or another. I always tell the story. Can you imagine this? My daughter, softball team, their coach, at the end of the season, that coach told the players, "You ready for this?" To go into the drugstore and steal stuff for him. And it did. And you know what? He got off with it. And he was still coaching. Don't ask me how they let this kind of thing go by, but that's how it happens in youth sports. So here we go with kids. Let me see whether another thing is all-star teams. Mentioning all-star teams. Are all-star teams really important? No. Because what happens, who do you think gets on the all-star teams? Now they got the season going on. It's time for selecting the all-star teams. And what happens is, you remember that coach, Billy's father? Yeah, he's the coach. And so guess who he signs up to be on the all-star team? Well, Billy has been sitting on the bench and only got into three games. And in the two games, he fumbled the ball and cost the team a win. But his father nominates him for the all-star team. So all hell breaks loose. Parents screaming, he can't do that. You know why he justifies it? He says, look, I've been out here doing this all year long. I got to be at the bank, running the bank, and I got to rush home, go out there with these kids, and nah, I'm not. No, Billy, he's on the all-star team. So that's why all-star teams become such a farce. In so many cases, it cause so much argument. So I'll get to my last episode before, hopefully, I have time for my friend Ross to come in to do our next segment, which is a new segment. But before I do, let me go through one more time with some of the original listeners that asked the question, why does Johnny hate sports? Johnny hates sports because at 6 years old, his father or his mother says, well, everybody down the street is signing their kids up for Little League. So, Johnny, you're going to play Little League baseball this year. Or it could be football or soccer, whatever. And Johnny doesn't know whether he wants to play or not. He just says, yeah, I guess so. If Charlie and whoever else of my friends are playing, I guess I'll go out and play. So that's the first thing that happens. I really apologize for this allergy deal I got. But so Johnny goes out there. He doesn't want to play baseball. Did you ever stop to think if it was your kid? He really likes drama, wants to be in a play in school, likes music, wants to play music. Nobody ever told him he wants to play sports except his mother or father. You're going to play sports. So he gets out there, and he's one of those kids that don't have the skills to be able to catch and throw and kick and hit and all of that. So that's what happens. And that's why he hates sports. The other thing is, like I mentioned, he goes out there and his dad's a coach. Or he's got another coach that isn't his dad. And his dad says, oh, well, let's see. I'll coach. And like I said before, he loses all perspective of what it's all about. And he starts screaming at his kid, screaming at the umpire, screaming at people in the stands. And so Johnny doesn't like it because he's embarrassed to death. And the last thing is the leagues that sign up. These are all a group of people. Like I say, they could be a psychiatrist, they could be a dishwasher, a plumber, truck driver. They all make up the board of directors of this volunteer league that they organize. And the only thing they got in mind is somebody's got to win the championship. We got to have a scoreboards and standings and all-star teams. And Johnny wants no part of that. And that's why Johnny hates sports. So we're going to cut here right now for, I think, whatever our engineer Juan's got next on the list. We're going to go to that. I hope.
In this best-selling book, a child, while failing to live up to his father's expectations, is shamed and humiliated beyond belief. He vows to never allow his own son to face the same.
Well, we've decided to start a new feature, and maybe today is a good time to do it because I can't talk. And the new feature is people kept saying, hey, the book that you wrote is called Billy Jones's Father. What is that all about? And I thought, you know what? I've seen people, I've done it myself. I ride in the car and I listen to these things, the greatest crimes in America and whatever stories. And I thought, yeah, maybe somebody would like to hear a different chapter at a time of the book. So let me start with doing the first part of the book, and we'll play it a little bit each week. And yeah, you can hear, and then you find out as the story goes on. Now, this story starts with my friend Sarah. They're out in Texas. And because of a lot of problems, they decide that they're going to move to North Carolina. So, Juan, if we could turn on, maybe we can let the listeners hear what happens in the first chapter of Billy Jones's Father.
Oh, my Lord, Dad, Sarah cried out in her Texas drawl as the sign saying, Welcome to North Carolina appeared. This sure isn't Texas. Breathing in the fresh smell of thousands of azaleas and rhododendrons with their spicy clove odor lining the highway, she couldn't contain herself. I think I'm already beginning to like North Carolina. In the distance, mountain after mountain, looking like an ocean filled with hurricane-sized waves, welcomed the Tobins to their new home. We're in Carolina, an overexcited Jeff sang out. Get that James Taylor CD, Sarah. I want to hear Carolina in my mind. As soon as the song came on, the family of three began to join along, sounding like a bunch of teenagers on their way to the beach while drowning out poor James Taylor with their exuberance. "Those are the Blue Ridge Mountains, aren't they, Dad?" asked Sarah. Other than when she went off to college, Sarah had never been too far from home. "They sure are, kid," Jeff said, as his wife Amanda sat full of thought about what lay ahead. She was excited about her new life and wondered what kind of impact she could have on a small town like Torrid Hills as a child psychologist. No sooner had they rounded a hill that had blocked the late afternoon sun shining in their eyes, a sign popped up saying, "Exit 24 to Torrid Hills." While taking the exit, a sky-high drone-like vision of small-town America lay in the distant valley below. A water tank with big black letters saying, "Welcome to Torrid Hills," urged Sarah to say, so loud that the folks in town could probably hear her, "We made it." They had reached their new hometown, and welcoming them were gigantic red maple trees, waving like blankets in the breeze. Torrid Hills was a typical small town in North Carolina with a population of 24,000, most of whom worked in the tobacco industry. Jeff had been hired by the national medical firm First Med as their local representative physician for the town. 3 Sarah, look for 26 Brentwood Street on your cell phone. That's the address of our new home, Jeff said. An excited Amanda eyed the colonial-style homes when Sarah yelled out, "There it is, Dad!" Sure enough, right in the middle of Brentwood Street stood a 2-story home covered with ivy. It didn't take long before the three unpacked their initial belongings and began to settle into their new home. On their first Monday in town, Jeff left early to visit his new office at First Med. Amanda, anxious to begin her journey as the town's only child psychologist, scoured the office space ads in the Torrid Hills Times. As for Sarah, she sought to seek out the local recreation department for any employment available. It didn't take long. She could see the sign above the recreation facility a mere block from her house saying Torrid Hills Parks and Recreation. Sarah wasn't one to waste time. She dressed and was almost out the door when Amanda said, "Wow, you're not even going to eat breakfast before you go?" "No time for that, Mom," Sarah answered. "A stitch in time saves 9. Walking in the recreation front door, Sarah was met with a voice sounding more like Scarlett O'Hara than Scarlett herself. "Good morning, ma'am," said the voice, reminding Sarah that she was in the South. "Good morning to you," Sarah replied. "I just moved in from out of town, Texas to be exact. I was wondering if there might be any employment openings?" Just then, around the corner, came a lady who looked to be in her mid-30s, dressed like she was about to enter a hog-tying event. "Hey there, I'm Emma Stewart. I couldn't help but overhear that you're looking for employment. You've come at the right time if you have the right credentials." "I do," Sarah said, as she grabbed a resume from her backpack. "Well, great," Emma said, as she glanced at Sarah's resume. "Why don't you come to my office and have a little chat about what's available?" Feeling enthused, Sarah sat down in Emma's office and glanced at the number of trophies strewn about. "Wow, there must be a big event going on with all these trophies," Sarah said. 4. You're looking at a small number of trophies that we will be giving out this year. Trophies for every sport you can imagine. We give them to kids in the 3 to the 5-year-old division up to the 16 to 18-year-olds. This town is crazy about sports. "Well, it sounds like I came to the right town. My background is in sports," Sarah said. Looking through Sarah's resume, Emma's eyebrows raised as she noticed the number of awards Sarah had gained playing all sports. "You certainly are qualified, especially with the degree you got in recreation," Emma said. "I need an assistant to cover a lot of details that are getting overwhelming for me. That is, if you're interested." "Absolutely," Sarah replied while almost coming out of her seat. "I'm ready to start whenever you want." "Well, it's Friday. How about we start on Monday?" Emma noted with a smile. "Great," Sarah answered as if she had just won the state lottery. Einde.
Well, there you have the first episode and the first chapter of Billy Jones's Father. And I can't wait for you to listen to the next part, because what Sarah runs into is Billy Jones's father. You're going to like this character. He's something else. So All right. So as I started out the early part of the show, today is not one of those days. My car broke down yesterday. I had a guest that didn't show up for the first session. My internet broke down. That's why I'm having to use my cell phone. And now I'm hoping that my friend Ross is going to be on. Because if not, it's doomsday. And I don't know what. Oh, I know why. Today's Friday the 13th. I never thought of it. Yeah, I'll use that as an excuse. So nobody's here. My guest and my special guest for Extra Innings, Ross, no, he's not here either. I don't know what happened, but something serious happened. So I guess we're going to have to close out one and finish up the end of it.
This program is sponsored by Sir Durf Publishing in the interest for better sports for kids, better kids for life.